And we are live, I believe. Hello, Sybil. How are you?
I'm good, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
I really enjoyed. I was looking over some of your stuff and going on your the website. I wish I
Mhm.
had a website. I like that. It's nice and clean. Um, I noticed I mean, go to Sybil's website and check it out. I noticed one thing in the kind of the description. You were saying a few things that you liked, and one of them was like historical fiction.
Yes,
Is
yes.
that correct?
Yeah.
Can you actually explain a little bit to me what that is? Give me an idea.
Yeah. A lot of some of the more recent historical fiction books that I've read have been based on the Bible, actually.
Okay.
So they're different series that are. Um, it's not a true story, it's fiction, but it's set in a time period.
Oh, nice.
And so I've read a lot of ones, like I said, based on, the Bible or a time in the Bible. They're not on specific characters that you would find in the Bible. They're, fictional characters. And then I enjoy the all time periods, really. I like to um I'm not really a fan of history per se, but
Okay.
if it's reading it in a story format, like
Yeah.
a book,
Yeah.
it's fun for me. I enjoy getting into the different time periods and the different characters, and just what it was like to
Yeah.
live in those times. So yeah, I think
As
I've read
soon as
from all
you
different.
as soon as you started explaining it, it kind of clicked in my brain. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that completely makes sense. I, um, I, I'm trying to think in my brain. I should have thought of this before we started. I read a book long time ago. It was definitely based like on a Christian belief and stuff.
Okay.
And man, I hope it just comes to me, but it hasn't yet. Um, but I'll dive into this. You are a biblical teacher. I've kind of connected with you on the social media, and I see that you're starting a new Bible study, and you have all
Yes.
these. You've got teachings and stuff. One is on Amazon, and there's
Hmm.
other on your website. I actually drove by. I saw that you go to the Bethany Church.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I've only been here for about 13 years in Fresno.
Okay.
I used to live in Porterville, which is close, but completely different area. And so
Right.
I had heard about Bethany Church a little bit here and there more recently. And I actually drove by there today, just randomly. I looked over and I said, "Oh, that's the church that Sybil goes to."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I just saw a sign. I think you have to drive in a little I didn't see the
Yes.
church.
Yeah, it's
Um,
set back. There's a really long driveway, and so it's set back on the property. And actually, I don't know if you're familiar with the last few years, maybe 5 years now. We've done a Journey to Bethlehem drive-through,
oh,
so you can go along the property, go in through the driveway, and there are actors, people from our church, and there's the town set up, and there's a narration actually that I originally worked on, and my friend Crystal adapted it this past year to include some more character speaking
okay.
roles, but you listen to it as you
Oh, nice.
drive through. And so you can kind of journey through with Mary and Joseph and the Christmas story. So it's an advantage to finally using that property to its advantage. But yeah, the church itself is set back pretty far.
Yeah.
Um, some people also, we have a large softball diamond, and so a lot of the churches will use that, and some even local leagues will use the softball diamond. So
Nice. Yeah, I actually I should have went and drove and looked, but I didn't do it. But what you were talking about that the Bethany stuff, have you
uh-huh.
ever heard of or went to the Riverdale? They have like a live nativity scene.
No, I haven't personally been, but actually, the gal who whose idea it was basically to do this journey to Bethlehem. Her name was Lori, and she had been to that or heard about it from someone, and her and her husband went to see it, and sort of the vision came to her that we had all this property, and could really do this where people just drove through and listened to to the story of Jesus and his birth. And so, that was where the vision came from. Actually, was she had heard about that, and
it's really good, but it's kind of a drive. It's
yes,
out there.
Right.
It's pretty busy. I mean, we've learned kind of when to go, so you don't have to wait in line for too long.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the fun is actually kind of waiting in line a little bit. You don't want to go when there's no line.
Right.
Go right through. We pile the kids into like a van. We've got like 5, 6, 7 kids with us, and buy snacks and kind of make it a whole ordeal. But we might just check out what you guys are doing too.
It's been great. I usually work in the kitchen for that event and kind of prepare snacks. I'm not sure what it'll look like this year, but I think it's going forward for sure with the drive-through portion where you can listen and see all the people kind of milling around.
That's true. I forget about the COVID stuff going on sometimes.
Everything looks a little different now, so I'm not really sure.
How long have you kind of gone to that church?
I started there, it was about 26 years ago. When I was in college, I attended Fresno Pacific.
Okay.
And I worked in the business office. And the woman that I worked with, I was like her student assistant, basically. She attended Bethany at that time. And my family and I were kind of looking for a new church. And so we went there. And so, my parents go there, and so they've been there that whole time. And then my husband and I, we lived in Sacramento for 5 years. But when we came back to Fresno, we went back there. So 26 years now, this year. So.
And do you know a little bit of the history, or is it a denomination, or?
It's affiliated with the Mennonite Brethren denomination. I don't really know much about that. There's a lot of people who are more knowledgeable about that than I am, but that's who the church is affiliated with, Mennonite Brethren.
What took you to Sacramento area?
Actually, it was my husband was going to graduate school at UC Davis. And so we got married and moved there and lived there for 5 years. And then came back to Fresno just after our second child was born. So be with our family, all our families here. So
I have 5 kids, and as they get a little older, the value of having everybody around, it kind of goes up and up and up. It's just so nice having everybody around.
Yes. And it's nice that both our families are in the same place, both our parents. And so it was an easy decision. Once he finished his graduate degree, we decided to come back here and make this our home. So
well, tell me, what's the new Bible study that you're kind of getting started? Was it a woman's study?
So usually I have spoken to mixed groups before, but usually my preference is to speak to women. This study that I'm going to be leading will start next week. It's actually not a study that I've written. It's a study that by Angie Smith. And it's a study that focuses on the life of Jesus and his ministry. And so I'm really excited about getting started with that. I've spent the last 2 months just reading through the Gospels on my, in my personal devotion time. So I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper into that. So we'll be having 2 online groups meetings. So I'm excited to get with that.
you have a completely different kind of personality or structure as myself. You're
Okay.
very you're on it. Like I can tell you have everything kind of I know they have a bunch of new personality like tests and stuff, but back
Yes.
in the old days, there used to be like sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and phlegmatic. And
Okay.
each had strengths and weaknesses, of course, but
Uh-huh.
you seem like the cholerics are the ones that get stuff done and they're very organized, and that just seems like you. And I
Yes. I
sometimes,
prefer it that way, but I
yeah,
don't know if it always happens.
exactly. Um, but it was something about you that I was like, oh, I like this. I like experiencing people doing things differently and different ways and stuff.
Sure.
Um, but when you get ready to do like a study like this, you did mention that you had been reading the Gospels.
Yes.
How long does it take you to kind of get your heart and mind around a new study and where you're going? How much time does it take you a week to prepare? What does kind of that whole thing look like?
Yeah, I think it depends on if it's a study that I'm personally going to be that I wrote or am teaching,
Yeah.
or if it's a study that I am leading.
Okay.
Leading a study that's already done where the teaching is there. Um, Usually, what I'll do is just go through the study myself. And as I'm going through, make a note of the questions
Mm,
that I might want to focus on when we're going through the discussion, and that kind of thing. If it's a study that I'm teaching, that
yeah.
takes a lot more. That takes a lot more work, because in addition to just the readings, just the preparing to teach, and doing a little more of the biblical study myself, so that I can be prepared to teach on different concepts. And so usually the week before, I will just go through and um, do the reading and prepare questions. I feel like the discussion piece is the most important.
Huh?
So even as I'm preparing my teaching, I will really try and think about what kind of questions I want to ask, or what kind of questions I want us as a group to talk about. So
Mm.
I'll do that same thing when I'm teaching a study um, that I'm not teaching. It just doesn't require as much as much work for me.
Yeah. Um, I didn't think about that, but yeah, they probably have like a workbook that they already
Mhm.
have all that stuff.
Right,
Gotcha.
right.
Um, what were you guys now? I know you went to Bethany Church as a family, kind
Mhm.
of in your college ages.
Yes,
Were you born and raised in a Christian home?
yes,
Okay.
yes. So, yeah, we started. I don't remember exactly. I mean, my all of my memories um, include church.
Yeah.
My parents were both raised Catholic, and so I think that's how it started. And then, um, not long into their marriage, then started attending Northwest Church, which is Northwest Fresno, and then so really, I all my life, I remember being in church.
Yeah.
So
Did you
yeah.
like it as a kid? Did you like going to the different events, or were you kind of always kind of
No,
yeah?
no. I did. What I didn't like was I was pretty shy as a kid.
Okay.
Didn't really. I'm still pretty reserved, I would say. But I didn't like going to new groups. I didn't like going to classes. So I remember a lot of times just asking my parents if I could stay with them in the
Yeah.
big church, as we called it.
Yeah.
And so it was hard for me. And um, it wasn't the church that I didn't like. It was just being in a new group of people, and what was I going to be asked to do? Who was going to be there? And it would change from week to week. So I didn't really, I don't think, enjoy going until probably I was in, um I don't know, maybe even high school.
Yeah.
And into a good youth group, and so I was more comfortable doing that. Plus, by that time, I started serving. So when I was in high school, I was teaching the preschool Sunday school classes because I really just enjoyed that. So yeah, that's kind of my church experience, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So did you kind of have a moment or a time where you feel like you became a Christian?
Yeah,
Did you have a time?
I have a specific memory from when I was 7,
Okay.
actually attending a vacation Bible school.
Okay.
And I don't know if we were at Woodward Park, but I remember being at a park and having that invitation being given and making that decision at that point. And then I was baptized when I was in, I think in a freshman or sophomore year of high school. So yeah, I do clearly remember that point
It
of
it
making that decision.
amazes me that a lot of people I talk to have these young, I think somebody said 4 years old. I mean, they
Okay.
remember it.
Uh-huh.
It's just kind of interesting to
Mm.
me. I don't have that young. I was raised in the church and I just kind of was a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had like 4 years of rebellion, and then I had a huge moment of becoming a Christian. But I don't
Okay.
remember the younger specific time of that happening.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's always interesting to hear.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, I just have that. I can see that in my mind.
yeah,
So, and I think that was more enjoyable for me because I remember I had a leader that I really connected with me and I connected with. And so I think, in fact, she was my babysitter after that for a time, just because we connected so well. And it was pretty difficult for me to, you know, feel comfortable around, other people beside my family. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Do you remember what were you into reading when you were younger? Was it always church stuff, or when you were younger, did you get lost in the books back then as
Yes.
well?
Yes. No, I've loved reading ever since I can remember. I don't remember. I mean, when I was a kid, I was always reading. I know that when I got into junior high and high school, I enjoyed like mystery and that genre. And so that was something that I, enjoyed reading, but I just like to read. So yes, I always had a book with me or my nose in a book. So that was something I've always loved.
Do you remember getting your like not maybe not your first Bible, but do you ever remember like an early memory of going to the Christian bookstore or somewhere, getting a Bible for the first time?
I don't know where it came from, but I still have it.
Oh,
Actually,
really?
my first Bible. Yeah. So I don't remember. Yeah, where I got it or who gave it to me. It might even say on the inside. I should look, but I do still have. It had like it has like a drawing almost in watercolor on the front with Jesus holding
Okay.
a child or with children around or something like that. But
Yeah.
I can't remember where it came from. So
Did you when did you kind of get into studying the Bible like in a serious way?
that came really probably around, I don't know, in 2012, I have this sort of, well, between 2010, 2012, was really kind of some hard years for me after my third child was born, my son. And so I remember in 2012, I actually participated the first time that I remember. Our church was encouraging us to do prayer and fasting during Lent.
Okay.
And so I did that and really just had a lot of things that God was speaking to me during that time, which was good because I had my previous, year and a half, 2 years before that. I wouldn't say I didn't believe in God, but I was just very discouraged and unsure about, God speaking to me or God hearing me my prayers specifically. And so during that Lent season, that's a real marker for me. That 2012, he spoke a lot of different things to me and kind of started me on this journey of back to writing. I'd always, as a kid, I liked reading and I liked to write. But once I got to college and then had kids and things like that, the time that I had to write really wasn't there. And so in that time period, there was a lot of, I did spent a lot of time praying, and actually started a blog out of that season. I don't write in it anymore, but that was kind of a popular thing to do at that point. Yeah. I think now podcasts are popular, but at that point, blogging was popular. And so I started a blog, and just really began to see, as I told my story and talked about the different things and kind of how faith and life really intersected, and I spent more time just in personal devotion, I think, after that. And then I started leading Bible study in, I think it was 2014, so a couple of years later. And then it wasn't long after that I just felt God asking me to write my own study. And so I think that's probably when it began, that deeper searching and studying the Word. And it was interesting because I had this sort of new experience with the verse that says to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. And I'd always been pretty heady. Like, that's just sort of where I would always go. And I didn't really think that using my mind was a way that I could love God until that point, when I started digging deeper into his Word and reading just commentaries and studying the original language, and all of those kinds of things really showed me a different love for God than I'd ever had before. And it was then not long after that verse kind of, I don't remember if someone said it to me or if I just read it and I thought, oh, okay, so that's what I'm doing. I'm just using my mind to kind of give me this greater love for God. So I did my first study, and then I did 3 studies in a row that I wrote. And then kind of took a break from that in terms of the writing, but still teaching. And but I think that was probably when studying the Bible in a new way was probably 2014 or so. So about 6 years ago, I guess. Yeah.
And you hit on this a little bit, but I ask you a little more of what that, when you're studying, is it always changing, or what's a specific way that you study? I remember having that big old concordance. I had a backpack, I'd carry my Bibles and a hymnal and my concordance, which was ginormous. And I would, spend time looking up each word and doing the Hebrew and the Greek and all that. What did it kind of look like for you through those first studies, maybe even?
Yeah, I think something similar to that. I spend a lot of time just reading over the passages and making note of things that just stood out to me. I like reading different translations and seeing how those are phrased, and what really, the different nuances and of that. And I like doing word studies, looking at specific words and seeing, okay, what do these mean? Because the English language is not as nuanced, I guess you would say, as the Hebrew and Greek languages. I've never studied them formally, but when you just look up the words and you look at, I have different Bible study tools that I use to just see that it's not just a single word that we're talking about. This is really more of a thought, or a concept rather than just meaning one word. So I do a lot of that, and obviously just praying over, what I'm reading and during my study time, and then try to put it into word. And I think, and I mentioned earlier, when I'm reading, especially as I'm preparing to teach or to write, I think of questions that I would ask about this passage, or questions that would be good for discussion. And so even in my personal devotion time, I use my journal and write down prayers and thoughts. And I always, probably at least, I don't know if it's every day, but probably at least 4 days a week, there'll be questions that I write as I'm studying. So I'm trying to think of, who would be presented to and what kind of questions would help someone dig a little deeper into the text. So.
Yeah, I am a huge fan of questions. I love
Okay.
questions.
Well, you do a podcast with interviewing people.
It's
So,
true.
I guess that makes sense.
It's true. No, but I have a bad habit, I guess. It's just the way your brain works. Somebody will ask me, I'm trying to think of an example. Somebody will ask me a simple question, and I cannot give a simple yes or a no. Oh, we were driving by, where were we coming? Oh, we went to Tulare Outlets yesterday with a couple of daughters, and on the way back we drove by like the palm reader place. And my girlfriend Miss K asked me, "Do you believe in palm readers?" And I guess I should have just stopped and understood what she was asking me. But I went into this long, like, well, what do you mean by palm reader? Do you mean like, it's annoying for the people in my life. But,
they're like, stop asking you questions.
Just yes or no.
I have to constantly remind, myself and my kids that just because I'm asking questions doesn't mean I don't agree, or that I think you're not right. I just need more information. So yeah, I do like to ask questions, and I think I want to my goal is always to get other people thinking. I don't want to just give an answer. I had a professor in college who became a good friend, actually ended up marrying my husband and I. And he said that the best teacher asks questions. So it's something that definitely has stuck with me from him and him as a teacher, to get other people thinking about what we're studying. I don't want to just tell somebody the answer. So.
Yeah, well, a lot of times people don't even realize that they don't really know why they believe something. They just have this answer they've always had, and that question can sometimes be a little irritant of, I never thought of it, like let me flesh that out or whatever.
Right.
But it's a good tool for sure. I was going to ask you about your Bible translations. You said that you like that. I was a little Bible translation nerd for a while. I spent way too much money on Bibles and stuff. Do you still do the physical Bible, or do you kind of do on the app?
Yeah, I have a lot of Bibles, but when I'm doing just for my personal devotion, I have one Bible that I read in and make notes in, and then I use the app if I'm curious about a verse or something that I've read and I want to look at it in a different translation, then I'll use the Bible app. If I'm preparing to teach, I will, if I don't have the translation, because I don't have every single one, I probably have 3 or 4 different ones, then I'll look. I usually like to use my Bibles to read through the passage, because usually I will notice something different than I did in the other translation. So I have a few that I like to use in paper. I'm not a digital reader. I mean, I will, but it's not my favorite. So.
I'm trying to, I don't know where I found out about this Bible, but I got this one. It's called The Word, and it has 30 plus different translations in it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so it's really, it's affordable now, kind of affordable. It used to be a lot of money. But it's definitely, I think I think it's New King James or NIV, unless it's kind of different, and it'll put the very.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Um,
that's great.
so you can kind of get lost in a verse or a
Yeah,
chapter for sure for a long time.
right. Yeah, I do something.
So that's fun. I was going to ask you about the ministry that you're involved with, Breaking the Chains.
Yes, okay.
And I'm curious to know more about this ministry, but overall, the whole sex trafficking, is that mainly kind of what you would say that ministry is helping people after that? Or talk a little bit about this ministry.
Yeah, so there are several different organizations in the Fresno area that work with either survivors or work on prevention and awareness for human trafficking. And it can be sex trafficking or labor trafficking or both. But Breaking the Chains specifically works for women. I think they even have some male clients now that have come out of trafficking, so have been rescued or come out of trafficking and work with the survivors to provide what they say hope, healing, and restoration. So they have a residential program.
Okay.
And so women can live on site in a safe house. And so that's mainly for those who it's not safe for them to be, maybe in their area. And so they come here for services and live in the safe house, or they don't have the resources to live on their own. Or the environment they would live in is not safe for them. And so they would live in residential. And then they also have clients who live on their own. So the non-residential clients who receive services as well. And so my role is I facilitate a couple of the classes that we teach. So I facilitate classes on safe relationships and boundaries. And then I'm in the process of creating a curriculum that I use with the women that I hope will become something more than just me using it someday. But right now in collaboration with the survivors. So as I teach them, we talk about the different things and then have had their input on what they would like to learn, study. And that curriculum really covers a really broad range of skills. So we look at trauma and what their story is, and then we look at the brain and what happens to the brain during trauma. And then we spend a lot of time on emotional intelligence, or just that idea that to become aware of your own emotions and how they affect you and how they affect other people. And then we do a little bit on communication and relationships over the course of about 12 weeks. So it's just adapting and changing as I have used it. I think it's probably been maybe a little over a year now that I started to adapt. There's not really any curriculum out there specific to human trafficking.
Yeah.
So the classes that I teach, the other classes on safe relationships and boundaries, those come from a curriculum that's already set up. And what I found as I was teaching, there was another curriculum that we used related to trauma, but it wasn't specific enough. And so that's really my goal, is to create something that is based on trauma and has concepts of emotional intelligence and communication skills, all those things that they need, but also incorporate some specific things that might be different for a trafficking victim that wouldn't be the same for someone who had a different type of experience, a different type of trauma, or a different type of had come out of a different type of situation. So
yeah, when I hear sex trafficking, it always sounds so distant, so far away, so not anywhere near my life at all. I think I have the phone number to report the hotline or something saved in my phone somewhere. I just clicked in my brain. But I've never used it. I've never ever thought that someone had been trafficked. am I just blind? Is this a different world? What is that reality that maybe we need to know about?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions out there. And I'm not the data people. Central Valley Justice Coalition, they keep track of all the data. And the Fresno County EOC, they have data as well. And so if you're looking for numbers, you could go to them and check out their information. But in terms of just awareness for the general population, yeah, the Central Valley is a huge area for trafficking, primarily because it is along the freeways. The 99 runs up and down the state. And so people, men and women, are trafficked from here and taken to other areas. But there's a lot of trafficking that goes on here in the Fresno area as well. Again, I don't have the numbers, but it's bigger than people think. I think a lot of times misconception is that trafficking is in other countries, and it does occur in other countries, but there is trafficking within the United States and even within our valley here in the Central Valley. So there are a lot of people to be served, unfortunately, in that area. And just with the access to, digital media and things like that, that of course increases the threat of trafficking, because the victims are more accessible through online media. But yeah, definitely, it could be someone that it could be someone, a child, a relative. A lot of times the traffickers will use a vulnerability that is in the person. And so, but it can happen probably any high school here in Fresno Clovis area. They would probably say, that there's someone from every area. It doesn't just focus on, a specific population or area. So
I forget what the name of it was, but it was on Netflix, the documentary, the Epstein documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And I started watching that, and I think maybe after the 200th or 400th girl, I just stopped, because I was like, I get the point. It's horrible, but it was almost unbelievable that could happen. It was kind of like, I never even thought of it happening in those little ways. Like a 12-year-old girl coming with a little bit older girl to, and it's just, it was kind of eye-opening and shocking. Where your organization, how do these girls find you, or what, does it come through the authorities? How does that work?
Yeah, it can come. They work closely with the founder of one of the founders of the organization. She is a survivor herself. And so they have a great relationship with the police department. So some come through that. Some of the non-residential clients are court ordered to go through the program. So it can come from a lot of different places. Referrals, like I said, from maybe a different county or a different city in California, but the girls or women can't stay there because it's not safe for them. And so then, there's an intake process, but it can come from all over, all different avenues, really. So like you said, the hotline, sometimes that will, people will call, and then they kind of figure out what are the resources that are needed for this client. And then that's sometimes when Breaking the Chains is contacted to say, we need a safe place, or, whatever the case may be. So.
And how did you kind of get connected with that? Or how did you decide this is something that I want to put my time into?
I was thinking about this before we got on tonight, trying to think about the time frame of it. And it seems like all of this happened sort of all in the same time, but I think it was 2014 when I was invited by a friend of mine who I worked with at the time. And she was having, she owned a home out in the Sunnyside area. And so they would have events. And so she was hosting an event for a different local organization, fundraiser. Mm-hmm. That they had. And so she invited me and I went, my mom and I went and, participated and listened to the story that was shared and all the different things. And so that really kind of piqued my interest. And at that time I was, working part-time. I was a school psychologist for 20 years. So I was doing that. And, I really felt like God was asking me to step away from that and into something else, but I wasn't really sure exactly what that something else was. And so the following year, I stopped working and in 2016 and did a fundraiser with my friend, same organization. And I really just felt called to that type of work. But the fundraiser, I'm not really an event person, so that wasn't for me. And I actually, the woman, one of the co-founders of Breaking the Chains, I actually knew. She tells a story a lot, so I can share it, that she was actually, her children attended the school that I worked at as a school psychologist. And so I worked with all of her children. And at that time, I didn't know she was a trafficking victim. And so we had known each other for a long time. And probably, I don't know, early 2015, she had approached me and letting me know that she had started this organization. And so it was later on, probably a year and a half later, when I decided the fundraising event thing wasn't for me, but I still wanted to work in that field. And so I called her. And we reconnected and just asked her what it was that she might need, what kind of volunteer services they needed. And at that time, she was teaching all the classes herself. And so we started together teaching, and then quickly I just, it was about 3.5 years ago now, January 2017, I started teaching with them. And so it just sort of, I always say that if God would have said, this is what you're going to be doing, and gave me like the big thing, I probably would have said no, but he kind of took me there gradually. And so he's kind to me in that way, because he knows that I would get a little bit anxious about these big, huge things that he's asking me to do, but just taking me there slowly. So but it was great to be able to just work with someone who I had known as a victim, and then to see her as a survivor and be able to serve in her organization has really been a huge blessing. So
interesting. Yeah, I've got a bunch of questions about that stuff.
I'm sure. Sorry, I know it's a lot.
No,
I told you I wear many hats, so I don't know.
I think I'm going to save it for another time, but I wanted to ask you about, I read that you had a passion for the beach.
Yes. Yeah.
You've kind of always been here in California, right?
Yes, I was actually born in Las Vegas. My dad was in the Air Force, and I didn't live there before I was a year old. My parents moved here back to Fresno, where my mom's family was living. So yeah, I've always been in Central California, and then, like I said, in Sacramento for a few years. So the beach is close, and it's always, my mom didn't like the mountains because she always got car sick. So our trips were to the beach usually, if we would go over to the coast and, spend some time over there.
I'm trying to imagine you as a child and you have your book. Did you do stuff at the beach, or were you reading, relaxing? What was the beach as a child?
Yeah, it would depend probably on the trip or who I was with. My aunt took us a couple summers in a row with my cousin and my sisters. And so I remember doing, things in the water, body surfing, but usually my preference would be to sit sometimes on the sand, but sometimes just close enough so I could see it and
Yeah.
hear it and read. So yeah,
Yeah.
usually I
Um,
was in a book.
so do you, as a family now, do you kind of go back to where you went as a kid to the beach, or have you guys found a different spot now?
We actually, a few years ago, probably 6 years ago now, I can't remember, we started going to Huntington Beach in Southern California. Before that, we'd always, as a kid, we always went to the Central Coast. It was closer. And so, Monterey, Pismo, those kind of places. But all of my kids really like being in the water, and it's hard to do that when you go to
Yeah.
Monterey and you're usually bundled up.
Yeah.
So my husband and I will still go there, and we will take the kids there too. But we've really enjoyed Huntington Beach in the summer. It's not too hot, and then everyone can go in the water. And you don't have to be all bundled up, but still cool enough that you're not in the 110
Yeah.
Fresno heat. So yeah.
Is it really crowded at Huntington Beach?
We've usually gone, it was, last year we went earlier in the summer just because of schedules and things. But typically in the years past, we've gone like the week or so before school started.
Okay.
And so, schools start at different times. And so we kind of found a time when it wasn't too bad, and we were there during the week. And go to the beach early, and it wasn't too bad in terms of crowds. Last year was more because we went in, I think, the end of June, and so it was a really just a heavier time in terms of people and crowds. But
I've never ventured out that way. It's always in the Pismo, cold, and I went to school in Monterey area for a couple of years and surfed, and it was just, I mean, you'd have a wetsuit and you'd be frozen.
Right.
Took an hour just to defrost.
Yeah.
I can't do it nowadays. It's too much.
Too cold. Yeah.
All my kids are homeschooled, so we kind of have that flexibility to kind of go whenever. So it's always been nice, whether we go to Disneyland or wherever, we can go when everybody's in school.
Right.
Seems like nobody's in school now.
Right. Yeah. Everything's different this year. Obviously, we didn't do our normal trip, so that was kind of sad for us not to be able to do that, because we've done it for, I think this would have been our 7th trip there in the summer. So.
How old are your kids? You have the 3, you said?
I have 3. Yeah. I have a daughter who is 17. She's in her senior year of high school, and then I have another daughter who's 15, and then a son who's 12.
Okay, gotcha. 5 years. As a teacher, as someone that's in that kind of a field, biblical or non, what is your concerns or like heart in this situation right now? Have your kids been able to adjust to the online? Are they going back at all right now?
Right now, they're all online. And we've been fortunate, I think, because obviously my kids are older, so they're more independent. They can do things on their own. My biggest worry was whether our internet could handle them being online all day, but that's been pretty good so far. We've had some pretty good luck with that. But I think my biggest concern, being, having been a school psychologist, and I primarily worked in schools that were just in areas where, parents and children were more vulnerable, and, they didn't have a lot of resources, and they didn't have space at their house to, to work, to study. They didn't have, maybe their home wasn't even a safe place for them. And so that's been ever since we, even in March when we first went, schools closed, and that's, I think, been a burden, and something that I've definitely been praying for is those families, children who, who don't really have a home environment that is, really conducive for learning and doing school. And I know that the schools are trying to provide all the resources that they can. And I know I have friends at On Ramps Church downtown, and they've actually opened their church up to, they're calling it the Parent Church Partnership or something like that. I don't want to get the name wrong, but they have kids coming in and they've set it up very safe. And so, for parents who just aren't able to provide that, or maybe they are working and so they're not home for their kids who are younger. So I think that's where I feel the biggest burden is for those families that don't have the resources, to do it.
I hear you. It's a crazy situation, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you to kind of, I don't want to keep you too long. Do you remember what? I'm sure you remember, but what was I'm curious. I remembered this question that I had forgot. What was your first study that you were talking about that you kind of put together? What was it about?
Oh, that I wrote myself.
Yeah.
Yep. It was a study in the Psalms, and so I did. Oh gosh, I don't really know. You're testing my knowledge. I think I did seven or eight different Psalms.
Okay.
That we studied, and so we went deeper into those. Talked about a little bit about the Psalms as a genre, of biblical literature and what that looked like. But we went through the Psalms and included a lot of my own personal story. That's the one study. I think the other two after that had some, obviously, as I'm writing it, I'm the one writing it, but the Psalm study had a lot more personal story narrative. I think that's where I was coming from with blogging and all those kinds of things too. But it was on a few different Psalms that we studied over like eight weeks or so.
So if you could only have one book of the Bible for the rest of your life to read, which one would it be?
Oh goodness. I really, I do have a lot of favorites. I think Genesis and Hebrews are like at the top of my list. I probably go back to Genesis once a year. I found that obviously it's the beginning, but there are so many biblical themes that are introduced at that point. And whenever I have a question about something that I'm reading later, I always think about, okay, what did God intend at the beginning? What was the design? How did that, what did he intend with creation? And always go back to that and the original covenants and all those things. So I think Genesis was probably at the top there. So
I think you're right. I think we forget how much is in Genesis. It kind of gets storybooked sometimes.
Yes,
It's got so many stories in it that little kids or whatever read a lot, right. And we kind of forget a lot of the chunk that's in there.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. I fell in love with the scripture. I remember becoming a Christian, and I don't remember where I got that Bible, but I walked around with my Bible for years. People would tease me and call me Bible boy and stuff like that.
Oh, gosh.
I went to school at the beach, so I was always walking and trying to read at the same time.
That's complicated.
My eyes would get all watery. It was not good. But it's just, there's so much in there. There's so much Hebrews as well. It's all so good. Yeah.
It's hard for me to pick a favorite because I'll read another and I think, oh, that's so good. Oh my goodness. So I just really have, really devoured that. I think there's a verse and I think it's Job that talks about that, just like kind of taking the word and just, devouring it. And it really is a passion for me, and it does, helps me get to know God more and get to know myself as a result of that. So.
Yes. Well, Sybil, I enjoyed talking to you.
Yes, thank you.
Tell me a little bit as we get out of here, what is next in your life? What are you passionate about right now? The next 5, 10 years? Maybe it's family, maybe it's ministry, maybe it's teaching, maybe it's going to the beach one more time.
Yeah, I would love that. I haven't been for a while. No, I think, like I mentioned, I'm working on this curriculum for, trafficking survivors. And so that's something that, I've been spending a lot of time on, focusing on. Obviously, my family, I have my oldest daughter is going to go off to college. So getting all of that, that's a big thing. And just, all the different things that come with that. One of the things that I went through a program last fall, or a 6-month program, July to December last year. And we were focusing on teaching, and that was kind of the focus of the program. And God gave me 5 C's, 5 things that started with C, that were part of the program was creating a mission statement and kind of a vision. And so one of those was curriculum. So I'm kind of already on that. And then communication and conversation. So just that, continuing teaching and continuing, asking questions, and just making connections. Connection was also one of them. And then the final C was coaching. And so I'm not exactly sure what that looks like yet. But I am interested, I think, in just doing a little bit more one-on-one or small group, asking people questions. I'm passionate about, as I get to know God, as I get to know myself, women knowing who they are, who God created them to be, and then being able to live into that, what God put inside of them. And so I think that's where that coaching word comes in, but I haven't really got full vision on it yet. So
Awesome. Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, Sybil, thank you for coming on. Thank you for giving us your time. I know people can connect with you on Instagram, Facebook.
Yes.
You've got your website is your name right through there.
Pretty easy.
Nice and simple.
Yes.
And then I'll put all the other links in there as well. I know you've got some studies on your website and on Amazon as well.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You too. It's gone by fast.
It did. And we'll see everybody next time. Everybody, God bless you guys. Adios.
Thank you.